Hey everyone, what's new with JAWS ZoomText and Fusion in 2023? Welcome to this webinar. We're glad that you joined us today. Thank you for taking the time to do so. We're going to take a look, maybe we'd even call it a smart glance into some of the new features today as we take a view, a tethered view perhaps, into some of these features. We're going to tell you why you should update and all the things that you're going to get if you do. So before we get started, let's introduce our participants. Elizabeth Whitaker, who has done these JAWS webinars for us for quite a number of years now. She's the product manager for user education and outreach. Joining her, I believe for the first time, is Ryan Jones, who's the vice president of software product management. And finally, he's joined us for a number of webinars, Low Vision, JAWS, otherwise, Mike Wood, Strategic Accounts Manager for Education. Glad to have all three of them with us today, and they will all be talking about different features in the new software. Let's talk about our learning objectives. What are we going to do today? So we're going to practice 3 steps to access the What's New pages for JAWS ZoomText and Fusion 2023. If you want to have more information about the features, that's the place to go and take a look at those. List at least 2 new features of JAWS, ZoomText, or Fusion 2023. We'll identify 3 keyboard commands for using the notification history feature in JAWS and Fusion. That's been very helpful. If you haven't tried that, I definitely recommend it. We'll review 3 keyboard commands for using the Smart Glance feature in JAWS and Fusion. I'm looking forward to hearing about that one more myself today. We'll list 6 steps for updating JAWS from within the help menu. And finally, before we turn it over to our participants, let's look at some challenges. You might be experiencing issues finding information on how to download and install the updated software, especially if you're new to JAWS. You might not know how to do that. You might not know what's available in the new update. And if you're a screen reader user and you have a Dell computer, you may have experienced stability issues over the last few years. Maybe Word, maybe Outlook has been crashing for you. Well, we've got a fix for that today. Finding key information that's highlighted visually on a website can be difficult without coding for accessibility. That's where Smart Glance is going to come in. So let's get started. And first, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to tell us what we're going to be doing today.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul and Betsy Ann, and thank you to APH for having us here. We're very excited to share all the new information about JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion 2023. Today, we're going to talk about several new features and enhancements. We're going to give you a quick overview of JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion. We're going to talk about how to update your software. We're going to talk about that Waves Max audio feature of Dell computers. Ryan's going to tell you more about that and about the enhancement for that. We're going to demonstrate a few features, which are Smart Glance, the notification history that Paul mentioned, and tethered view. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different features. We're also going to tell you how to get help in JAWS. You know, if you're wondering where to find information on whether it's new features, existing features that you've used before, we're going to show you how to find help in the JAWS window, in the JAWS help menu. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. And hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Jones, Vice President of Software and Product Management at Vispero/Freedom Scientific. Many of you probably know that Eric Damery retired back in the summer. Had been doing this role for many years, and so I've stepped in now to lead our team that's creating the software and supporting and training and all things software at Vispero. So I'm really excited to be here. Just a couple of quick background notes for some of you who do know me and some who don't. I've been with the company for about 17 years. Now I am blind myself, so I use JAWS on a daily basis. I have Leber's congenital amaurosis, so I grew up low vision using ZoomText and Magic and other low vision technology through school, and then I transitioned about 22 years ago to using JAWS full-time. So let's just talk briefly just as a general overview about what the software products are and what the type of user that benefits most from. So if we think about JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion, those are the three words we always use for our software. JAWS, the general goal of JAWS is to allow someone who has very little or no usable vision to interact with the computer. So someone like myself, I have no ability to visually read print anymore. I'm a JAWS user. I don't use anything visual on the screen. So JAWS is driven entirely by keyboard commands. You will find very little in the way of visual enhancements done in JAWS. Now, you will find when you're navigating websites with JAWS, it will try to put a focus highlight around, or a little box around the part of the web page that you're on. That's not so much for the JAWS user as it is for someone who might be assisting or working with the JAWS user so that they can see where JAWS is on the screen. So JAWS is geared specifically for people with very little or no vision. ZoomText is geared for people with low vision. So its functions are primarily around enhancing the visual presentation of the screen, whether it's making, zooming in and zooming out, making the things larger, changing color combinations, setting high contrast modes, changing the visual appearance of the mouse pointer or the cursor. Everything is driven around the visual presentation. And not so much around speech. So there's ZoomText, and then there's ZoomText Magnifier with speech. So there are two versions of ZoomText. The first version, ZoomText Magnifier, no speech functionality at all. It's just geared for someone using their eyesight. However, there is ZoomText Magnifier with speech, which has some basic speech functionality. It's not going to be near to the level of JAWS. It's not supposed to be. It's there for someone who's low vision, who maybe you don't want to visually read an entire document because it creates eye strain or eye fatigue. Maybe certain documents are just visually difficult to read. And so there's speech functionality built in at a basic level. You can point your mouse at text and it can speak it. You can tell it to read a document, a web page, whatever it is, but it's not going to give you the same level of control as you would have with JAWS, for example. And then there's Fusion. Fusion is a combination of JAWS and ZoomText. So for someone who uses Fusion or has Fusion, you basically have both JAWS independently, you have ZoomText independently, and you can run them together as Fusion. So you have the magnification abilities of ZoomText and all the powerful speech functionalities of JAWS. That's Fusion. Many people who have Fusion only use one product or the other. They may not even use them together as Fusion. So for example, if when I was in high school, let's say, and I was slowly losing my functional vision, I might have been using ZoomText more at that time. But if I had Fusion, what it would allow me to do is slowly transition to using more speech. So I might use JAWS and ZoomText together for a time because I'm still using my functional vision, but I'm relying more and more on speech. And then over time, as my vision deteriorated further, then I would have switched to not using the ZoomText part at all. I would have just switched to using JAWS by itself. So Fusion gives you the ability to use either JAWS or ZoomText independently, or run them together and get the abilities of both programs, the zooming, the visual functionality of ZoomText, and then the text-to-speech functionality of JAWS. So that's just the kind of the brief highlight, the brief overview of what the products are, what type of user they will best serve. And I believe we may have a poll question about this. Is that right?
Thanks, Ryan. Yep, we do have a poll question. And question is, what operating systems support JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion? Check all that apply. 6 choices here. Choices are Linux, Windows 11 SE Education, Mac, iOS, Android, and regular Windows. What operating systems support JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion? Check all that apply. Linux, Windows 11 SE Education, Mac, iOS, Android, and Windows.
if I can give tips, but I think the name of our product is JAWS for Windows. So maybe that helps as a tip. I don't know.
We might have stumped some folks with this question. So thanks for the hint, Ryan. I think it came too late for some. And we'll give you just another moment to take that poll. And of course, you can use our chat if you've got any questions. Nancy shares that we should have probably made it more complicated by adding Chromebook or Chromebox as Chromebook as an option for an operating system. All right. Well, early results are in. Everybody's answered so far. 77% chose, we'll go from the top. So most popular choice by far at 94% was Windows. 77% selected Windows 11 SE for education. Next greatest category was 30% who selected Mac. 25% said Android. 24% said Linux, and 14% said iOS. Ryan, what were the correct choices?
Yeah, so the correct answers are Windows and Windows SE, Windows 11 SE. We threw that Windows 11 SE in there because that's a special education version of Windows 11 that Microsoft has put out. So that, I don't know how widespread it is. It's actually, it's fairly new from Microsoft, so I suspect it might be used more and more over time by education, schools. It's a way to lock down a machine and allow a student to only have certain permissions and install certain pieces of software. So for example, if you have a Windows 11 SE edition on your computer, you can't just go download and install any piece of software. You can only download things from a trusted Microsoft store, for example. And so JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion are certified for Windows 11 SE by Microsoft. They are available to deploy. So we wanted to just highlight that if you start to hear about this in schools or school systems, our software will work there as well. Again, Windows is the platform that JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion will work with. It will not work with Mac computers. It will not work with Android or any Google platforms like Android or Chrome, Chromevox or Chromebooks, not to be confused with Chrome as the browser, but the Chromebook is a piece of hardware that only runs the Chrome operating system. And so again, just going to work with Windows as the platform.
All right, thank you for that, Ryan. Okay, we're going to move on to our next presenter, Elizabeth Whitaker.
Well, I think Ryan is going to talk about our next feature first. No problem.
Yep, I've just got a couple more things I'm going to cover, and then Liz is going to keep us going. So I wanted to just briefly mention, we're talking about what's new in JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion. So the version that currently has been released back at the end of October is version 2023. So our software versions are based on calendar year. So we release the upcoming, it's kind of, think of like a car, when you go to buy a car, you get the next year's version before that year starts. So we release the version of the next calendar year, usually at the late October of the prior year. So 2023 came out a little over a month ago, and then 2024 will come out about a year from now in late October of next year. So we have one major release per year, and then throughout the year, about every 6 to 8 weeks, we have minor updates that come out. And those minor updates, they may include bug fixes, they may include changes that we need to make to keep up with what Microsoft Office is doing, or Google Docs or Google Suites doing. Browsers are often making changes. So we have to constantly be updating our software to keep up with what the other big companies are doing. And so those updates come out about every 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes we do put new features in as we have them ready in those updates. But once you have the major version, let's say 2023, for example, then any of those minor updates you would be able to install it in, depending on your environment that you're working in, you should get notifications when those updates are available, and then you can download and install them directly from those notifications. Now, if you're behind certain firewalls or in really restricted settings, you might not get those update notifications. So 2023 is out now. Our first update for 2023 actually will be coming out next week, in probably the middle of next week in December. And so then we'll have another one in February, and so on and so forth. So if you don't, quite a few of you said you don't have 2023 yet, you can get 2023 by going to the Freedom Scientific website, freedomscientific.com, and there's a software releases section on that page, and there are links there where you can download version 2023. You can read the what's new features that we're actually going to be talking about today, but you can also read a description of those things. And then for some of you, if you're using version 2022 of JAWS ZoomText or Fusion, you may also have gotten an announcement, or if you go to the help menu and choose check for updates, you may also see a notification there that you can download 2023. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get access to 2023. And again, those updates will continue to happen for this version several times throughout the upcoming year. I want to quickly move on to the first thing we'll talk about that's new in 2023. And this is what we're calling a fix to the Dell WavesMax issue. Dell computers are obviously extremely popular. I've got several Dell laptops in my office and have used Dell for quite a number of years. We started getting calls in our tech support team a couple of years ago with people that were using Dell computers that were having what would be described as stability issues. So sometimes, things would randomly crash. Maybe Microsoft Word would just crash, or the computer would get real sluggish over time. There was no real rhyme or reason as to why it was happening. Computer crashes are about the hardest thing to really figure out what's going on, or especially sluggishness, when it just kind of freezes up for a few seconds or locks up. Those are really hard things to troubleshoot because there could be 1,000 reasons why it's happening. But we started noticing a lot more calls around this, and it took a while, but we finally determined that an application that was coming installed on Dell computers called Dell WavesMax Audio was the culprit. And WavesMax Audio is a little helper application that runs in the background. You don't even know it's there. And it deals with the audio drivers of your computer. So if you plug your headphones in and you notice the audio automatically switches to come out of your headphones, for example, or when you unplug headphones, audio switches back to your speakers. Those are things driven by the Dell WavesMax application on most Dell computers. And what we found out is that application, they had never tested it with text-to-speech software like JAWS or even NVDA or Windows Narrator. They had never tested it with that. And so what was happening is it was sucking up all the memory on the computer, the more speech that was being presented to the computer. So the more that JAWS was talking, for example, the more that the Dell WavesMax application would start taking up all the usable memory. So it might go from using like 5 megabytes of memory to 2 or 3 gigabytes of memory over the course of several hours or a day. And that's unheard of. That there's no real reason it should. So it's actually a bug in the Dell WavesMax application. We reached out to Dell. We had a variety of conversations with them. As all of you know, in the global scheme, assistive technology, we're a small fish in a big pond. So we didn't get a whole lot of traction from Dell about getting this fixed. So we decided to figure out a way that we could fix it ourselves. And so we made some changes in 2023 to the synthesizer drivers that we use to make JAWS speak, to try to deal with this issue and make this Dell WavesMax program not suck up all the available memory on the computer. And so that worked. And now if you're using JAWS or ZoomText Fusion 2023 and you have a Dell computer, the WavesMax application will not suck up all the memory, and thus if you were experiencing stability issues and it was caused by that, that should no longer happen with 2023. Now, the thing that we would always tell people to fix the issue before is we said, well, you have to disable the Waves Max audio application. And that worked because that program was no longer running in the background, so it didn't suck up all the memory. But you lost the ability for the computer to automatically switch to headphones or switch back to PC audio. So you kind of had the loss of some of the benefits that Dell Waves Max gave you. If you if you or your students or any clients that you work with have disabled the Dell Waves Max application because of this, you can now re-enable it if you're using version 2023, because we basically found a way to work around it. So it's one of those things that it's not a shiny new feature, but we think it'll have a big impact on a lot of people that may have even been experiencing sluggishness on the computer or crashes, and you didn't even know why it was happening, or really maybe even pay attention that it was happening. So that's the Dell Waves Max audio issue. Ironically, Dell has finally reached back out and said they are looking at this now and maybe they'll fix it themselves. But basically, we couldn't just wait on Dell because this was affecting too many people. So that's why we came up with our own way to get around this issue. So that's one of the highlights of this update. And I'm going to turn it over to Liz now to talk about one of the star features in JAWS of 2023, which is the Smart Glance feature.
All right, thanks, Ryan. And before we get to that, does anybody have any questions about what Ryan talked about?
One question came in that we missed, and just to reiterate, is there any version of JAWS or ZoomText that will work on a Chromebook?
No, there's not, because a Chromebook uses the Chrome operating system that's made by Google, it's obviously not Windows. And so JAWS, ZoomText and Fusion will only work on Microsoft Windows. So there is no version that can work on a Chromebook at this time.
Great, thanks for clarifying, Ryan. That was the only question that had come in. So I think we're ready to keep going.
Okay. All right, well, one of the new features that Paul had mentioned earlier and that we've kind of talked about a little bit here is called Smart Glance. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what this is, and then I'm going to share my screen and show you how it works. So when you're navigating a web page with JAWS, when you're using JAWS, you're going to use a lot of keyboard commands. You're going to be able to, down arrow, up and down arrow through your page and read the content, but you're going to want to navigate to certain items very quickly. And to do that, we use what are called quick navigation keys. And these are keyboard commands that allow you to navigate to certain elements on a web page, things that are coded in a certain way. For example, link, it's been coded to be a link, or a heading, or a table, and things like that. And so we use those keyboard commands to navigate quickly through a page. But sometimes, well, actually, oftentimes, whether we realize it or not, as JAWS users, there's information on that page that the developer wanted to call attention to visually. So this may happen in the form, this may occur in the form of, text that's a different color, a different font, some attribute that visually calls attention to the text. But if it is not coded as, for example, a heading or, another element, we don't necessarily know that this is important information. We might read it, we might down arrow and encounter this information, but we really don't know that this information that, it's supposed to call attention to this information because we're not seeing it as an element on that web page. Well, Smart Glance will analyze the different attributes, things like, text that has a certain font or color, foreground or background colors. And we now have ways of navigating through this information. And I'm going to show you how this works in two different places. I'm going to show you on the Canvas platform, and then I'm also going to show you for a form for creating a new Gmail address. So if you're wanting to create, we see this a lot on forms where, and this is a great example of where Smart Glance really comes in handy, is that as a JAWS user, you're navigating through a form. You have all these different fields. Some of them are required, so those may be in red or some other color. A lot of times it is red. Or maybe you accidentally leave out a piece of information. Maybe there's a field that you accidentally skip and you go to submit that form. And sometimes you get a message that tells you, what field that is. Please enter a valid password or valid email address. Sometimes you just get information that says, please enter all required information. And then sometimes you don't get any feedback at all, depending on how that form is created. So Smart Glance, one of the ways we can use Smart Glance is to navigate through those different fields, and we can figure out from that what we might have left out on that form. That's just one example. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so we can demonstrate how this works. And I'm going to share my speech here so that you can hear JAWS.
Meeting control.
All right.
Zoom. Create your Google Zoom list at heading level 1.
So I'm here on a page where I can create a new Gmail address. And so I'm going to go to the top with Control Home.
Create your Google account.
And I am going to navigate this field. There are a number of ways. There are always a number of ways you can do things. I'm going to use the letter F for form field, so I can navigate through the different fields here.
First name edit.
All right, so that's asking for the first name. So I'm going to press enter to turn on forms mode, which is going to allow me to enter information into this field.
Enter first name edit.
And I'll type my name here.
Liz.
I'm going to tab through this field or this form now.
Last name edit.
I'll type a last name.
Water. Username as pop-up.
And I'll just make up something here.
FSTRAING. Password edit.
All right, so I'm going through, I'm filling out this form.
Star.
I'm just typing in a password there.
Confirm.
So let's say I accidentally leave out this confirm password field. I don't put anything in this field.
Show password checkbox not checked. Next button.
And if I press space here on next.
Space. Confirm password edit invalid entry.
Now, this particular form happened to tell me that. It told me I needed to type something in the confirm password field, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you don't get any feedback. And you'll see this too. You'll see this if you're purchasing items online, if you're filling out a form, any place where you are entering information. Now, I also want to point out here that, of course, not all web pages are equal. They're not all created the same. And so, you don't necessarily, you may, find sites where you don't encounter this. But for the most part, you're probably going to have some kind of, information here, some kind of color or font that's been used to call attention to those fields. So I'm going to turn my virtual PC cursor back on with the
virtual
plus key here. And I'm going to go to the top of the page. You don't have to do that, but I'm just going to go to the top of the page just so we can start from there.
Create your Google.
So let's say I'm filling out a field or filling out a form, and I go to submit it and nothing happens. And I want to know, what did I leave out? Because sometimes, you'll encounter combo boxes or check boxes or other things that you have to interact with. So Smart Glance, this feature, we can use a quick navigation key, the letter Y as in Yankee, to navigate forward through what we call glance highlights. Just like we use H to navigate forward through headings on a page, we can press the letter Y. We can press Shift Y to go backward, but we're going to press Y.
To continue to Gmail.
Now, this just happens to be text that is probably in a different color. I can verify that if I want with insert 5.
Chrome JAWS setting escape create
5, not 6.
Gray 13 on white.
And that tells me what color it is. That's insert 5 on the number row. I can keep pressing the letter Y here.
At gmail.com. Available. Confirm password edit invalid entry.
So here it said confirm password edit. Let me know that's an edit field. Invalid entry. So I know that from here I could press enter, turn forms mode on, and type a password. So again, you can just keep pressing the letter Y.
Confirm your password. Show password. Pass details.
Now, another thing you can do is you can bring up a list of what we call glance highlights on a page. And you can do that with the keyboard command Control JAWS key Y, Yankee. And that could be, the JAWS key could be your insert key, or it could be your caps lock key. If you're using a laptop and you have your keyboards, you have it set to laptop layout, then you can use your caps lock key as your JAWS key. So we're going to press Control caps lock Y.
Select the Smart Glance highlight dialog. List 1, list view 1 account. All of Google working for you. 7 of 7.
All right, so now it brought up a list in what we call the virtual viewer, which just means here we can arrow through these items. So we have a list of what we call glance highlights, and we can use our up and down arrow keys to navigate. We're on the last one because it said 7 of 7. So I'm going to go to the top with Control Home.
To continue to Gmail.
Now I'm going to down arrow because I know I've left out, some information in this form, and I'm not sure where that is. So I'm going to down arrow.
At gmail.com. 2 of available. 3 of 7. 4 of 7. Confirm your password. 5 of 7.
Ah, there it is. Confirm my password. I can press enter.
Enter. Confirm your password.
And it takes me right to that area. So that's how you can use Smart Glance on a form. And again, I've also used it in situations where if you're purchasing something online, sometimes certain fields are very tricky in terms of how you navigate through them and how you interact with them. And sometimes if you tab through a form, you might encounter something that is it skips over a piece of information, or you didn't know that piece of information was there. So that is another way you can use Smart Glance. I'm going to go over here to a Canvas
Announcements
page here. Now I am using Canvas. It's the free Canvas for teachers. So I don't know if if you're using Canvas in a classroom, it may interact a little bit differently. I'm not really sure how that works because I don't have access to an actual account that a student would use. But here in Canvas, we have our dashboard, and from there I went to announcements. So you can go to different things like grades, announcements, all your different files, courses, things like that. So I went to announcements, and I want to know what text on this page that the developers have called attention to. How have they made certain things on this page stand out? Now, again, there are many ways you can get the things. You can use the JAWS find command if you know what you're looking for. Sometimes you really don't know what you're looking for. Sometimes you might just want to see what things on a page stand out. So I'm going to press the letter Y.
Announcements. All sections. 1 unread replies, 1 total replies.
So right there it says 1 unread replies, 1 total replies. So I know I'm actually in the announcement area here, and I can down arrow.
Manage options for welcome button menu posted on Mar 9 when main region end. Canvas support button.
And I can go down and I can see what my options are here and read the text that's around this area. But again, it just notifies me, navigates to the text that stands out because it's a different color, a different font, or some type of attribute. You'll also see this too with contact information on a page. So if you're on a home page for a company, and Vispero is, if you go to freedomscientific.com, for example, you'll find this. If you press the letter Y, that contact information stands out, so it will navigate to that information. All right, so before we move on to the next feature, I want to show you how to navigate the settings for Smart Glance. And I'm just going to go over these really quickly. We're going to use the JAWS Settings Center for this. I'm going to press Insert 6 on the number row.
Chrome JAWS Settings Center dialog.
So now it brings up the JAWS Settings Center, and because I'm in Chrome, it's set for Chrome. I want to set it for default because whatever I change, I want it to change globally. So I don't want it to just change it for Chrome. I want it to do it for Edge, Chrome, or any other browser that I might use. So I'm going to press Control-Shift-D as in Delta.
JAWS Settings Center default all applications.
All right. And now I am going to
preview. Search box edit.
I'm here in a search box by default. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to hit tab. I'm I'm in a search box. So I press insert 6 on the number row. I pressed that open settings center. I pressed Control Shift D as in Delta. That set everything for the default, whatever settings I change, it's gonna set those for all applications. And now I'm in a search box. I'm just going to type in the word glance. I could type in smart glance, but I'm going to type glance because we actually have several things that could come up if I type the word smart. So I'm just going to type glance.
GLANCE. Smart glance, one of 2 search results.
And it said we have 2 search results there. So I'm going to down arrow now.
2 search results list box, smart glance, web/HT.
And that just tells me the category. This is for web and HTML. Now I'm going to down arrow again.
Indicate smart glance highlights on page load, smart glance web/.
And we have the second option. So I'm going to go back up to this first option
Smart
here.
glance. Enter, search at
And I press enter.
miscellaneous. Smart glance closed.
And it places me on the smart glance setting here. It says closed, which means that it's an area that's collapsed. And if I open it with right arrow,
Smart glance open, 3 items.
now it's going to show me all 3 settings or all 3 categories of settings for smart glance. So we're just going to go through these briefly. I'm going to press down arrow.
Level 2, indicate smart glance highlights on page load, 1 of 3.
So this first setting is for indicating smart glance highlights. How do we want this to happen? By default, it's going to indicate them on page load. And what that means is when a web page loads, if you've ever, for those of you who use JAWS, of course, you'll have heard this lots of times. And for those of you who haven't used JAWS on the internet, maybe when you load a page, you're going to hear information like the number of links on the page, the number of headings, and if you have this setting, if you leave this setting as is, the number of smart glance highlights. So I have it set to tell me how many are on a page when the page loads. So I'm going to press the space bar. We're going to go through these options here.
Space while navigating, 3 of 4.
We can set it for on page load. It's going to tell you how many. Or we can set it to notify us of smart glances while we navigate. It's going to play a sound for that.
Space, both, 4 of 4.
We can set it for both. So, it's going to tell me how many smart glance highlights are on a page when it loads. And then as I arrow through information and read it, it's going to indicate when it's on a glance highlight, which is nice because that lets you know that you're reading text that stands out visually.
Space off, 1 of 4.
We can also turn it off.
Space on page load.
And we're back to on page load, and I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to down arrow to the next setting.
Sensitivity default.
So here we have a setting for sensitivity. This has to do with how it analyzes a smart glance. We have default.
Space high, 2 of 2.
And we have high. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on default.
Space default.
I'm going to down arrow to the next setting.
Include elements closed.
This is a setting for whether you want to include certain web page elements in the list of or in the glance highlights, even if, for example, let's just open it. I'm going to press right arrow.
Include.
For example, we have links, we have headings, and we know we can navigate to links and headings by using other quick navigation keys. But if those links or headings stand out visually, they will also appear as a glance highlight if you want them to. So we're going to down arrow here.
Level 3, links not checked, 1 of 5. Include elements.
So I have that not checked because I really don't, I don't necessarily need to know if a link stands out. Maybe there are web pages where I would want to know that though. And if I wanted to check it, I could press the space bar.
Headings not checked.
Headings is not checked by default.
Form fields not checked.
This, if we check it, will have every form field will show up as a glance highlight.
Require.
Every form field that, let me rephrase that. Every form field where, where something is calling attention to it visually, it will show up.
Required fields checked.
Now these last 2 are checked by default. We have required fields, which oftentimes will show up in red. I definitely want to know about those because if I accidentally leave one out, I definitely want to know. Or if I just want to know all the required fields on a page, on a form, before I fill it out, I can use the letter Y to navigate through those required fields.
Invalid fields checked.
And invalid fields is checked. So again, back to that Google form where I left out the confirmation, confirm your password, that was invalid because I didn't enter anything. And so it let me know. So those two are checked by default. And those are the settings for Smart Glance. I'm just going to press escape.
Escape announcements.
I could go to OK if I'd changed anything, but I just press escape to get out of it. All right, let's go back to
Meeting and
see if you guys have any questions
Alt S.
before we. Oh, and we do have a poll question, actually.
Yes. Yeah, so let's go ahead and launch the poll question. So I'm going to start screen sharing.
Okay, we should be unmuted now. All right, so this is our next poll question, and it is: Smart Glance is available in which of the following applications? Microsoft Word, web browsers, Windows Media Player, or Microsoft Excel? Smart Glance is available in which of the following applications? Word, web browsers, Windows Media Player, or Microsoft Excel?
So Elizabeth, the first question that came in is, can Smart Glance be accessed with both JAWS and ZoomText?
Okay, sorry about that. I wasn't sure if I was muted or unmuted. No, Smart Glance can be used in JAWS and Fusion if you are using JAWS. If you're a Fusion user who is using JAWS. So no, it is just in JAWS. It's not in ZoomText.
Great, thank you.
Great question.
What version of JAWS is needed for Smart Glance?
Great question. 2023.
Great, and so it's only 2023. Earlier versions such as 2022 do not have this feature.
Correct. That is correct.
Great. And with Smart Glance, will it automatically announce Smart Glance items when you open a web page?
It will not necessarily announce the particular items, but it'll let you know how many there are. But if you, like, for example, if it says there are 5, glance highlights, you can always use that keyboard command, Control JAWS key Y, or I used caps lock because I'm using a laptop. So Control caps lock Y brought up a list of the glance highlights.
Great. And no other questions. So let's look at the poll question. For Smart Glance, is it available in which of the following applications? This was a single choice answer. 89% chose web browsers, 7% chose Windows Media Player, 2% chose Microsoft Excel, and 5% chose Microsoft Word. What was the correct response?
Web browsers.
Fantastic. Thank you
Yes.
for taking that poll. And we're moving on to access notification history.
All right, great. So the notification history is a feature that was introduced in the June update of 2023, 2022. Sorry about that. The June update of 2022, just this past June. But we have made some enhancements to it in the release of JAWS and Fusion 2023. And like Smart Glance, this is a JAWS feature. So if you're using JAWS or if you're using Fusion and running JAWS, if you're a Fusion user who uses JAWS, you're going to have access to this. So we get a lot of notifications, whether they're Windows notifications or application-specific notifications. For example, you're going to have notifications from Outlook that tell you when a new message has arrived. You're even going to see notifications in Office products like Word and Outlook. For example, if you have a document and you have revisions to that document, if you're using track changes, or if you have spelling suggestions, grammar suggestions, things like that. So lots of notifications come in all the time. And we don't necessarily need to hear all those notifications. So we can get to those in Windows and we can turn them on, turn them off, things like that. But the JAWS notification history allows you to navigate the list of notifications and manage them like we've not been able to before. This is a great way to really decide what you want to hear, how you want to hear it, and also for Braille users, whether you want it to appear on your Braille display. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to walk you through the notification history. We're going to talk about the dialogue, and you can even create rules about how you want to hear these things or how you want to receive these notifications. So I'm going to share my screen again here.
Meeting control.
All right, I'm going to go to my desktop here.
Windows
I don't
app.
need to do that, but I'm going to. So the notification history can be accessed through what we call layered commands. And so, since JAWS is so dependent on keyboard commands, there are a lot of different commands that we have. And so we created the command layer so that you could easily navigate to different features, and they're kind of grouped together. So for example, if I press insert space, that's going to activate the command layer. And then I have a few options for notifications. We're going to talk about those. But if I press insert space, I'm going to follow that with the letter N for notification if I want to get to notification history. And that keeps you from having to use a lot of, pressed a lot of different keys at the same time. And again, it just kind of groups these features together. So I'll show you what I mean by that. But we're going to press insert space.
Space.
And you'll hear that little click sound. And you can press the letter N for notifications.
Notification history.
All right, so I have the notification history here.
Mike Woods has stopped.
Oh, good. I have notifications because I actually cleared it earlier.
That
So
user.
this notification history is going to show you your notifications for the last 24 hours, as long as JAWS has been running when you're using a computer. It's going to show you those notifications. It's going to go back 24 hours or up to 500 notifications. If you've received more than 500 notifications in the last 24 hours, it's just going to show you the last 500 notifications. I personally have not had that happen. I usually have somewhere in the neighborhood of 150, maybe 200 notifications within a 24-hour period, which just goes to show how many notifications we receive all the time. Things that I don't even hear come in, I have notifications for. So when I press insert space, followed by N for notifications, it brings up my list of notifications that I have. And I'm here on the first one. I'm going to go ahead and do a say line command, which is JAWS key up arrow.
That username is taken. Try another. Chrome 12:03 p.m. 1 of 30.
So, wow, that's interesting because I cleared my notification history a couple of hours ago and I already have 30 notifications. So it reads you the notification. It tells you what application it came from and when. It gives you a time. So I can just down arrow through this list.
Mike Woods has started screen share. Betsy Huggins has stopped screen share. Mike Woods has joined the meeting.
And you can navigate to the bottom of the list with Control End, the top of the list with Control Home. So
that username is taken.
That's the very first notification I have. All right. So I'm going to navigate this dialog and just show you how to get around it and what we have here. And then I'm going to show you how to manage those notifications. So I'm going to press the Tab key.
Enable rules checkbox checked. E.
So here we have a checkbox which is checked by default for enable rules, and I'm just going to leave that checked. Whether I create any rules or not, it doesn't matter. I can leave that checked.
Create rule ... button C.
There is a button for create rule.
Manage rules ... button M.
There's one for managing rules. Now, if you've not created any rules, you won't have the option to manage them. Once you create a rule, then you will have this option in your dialog.
Clear history button L.
Here's a new thing that we have where it's a new enhancement for 2023 where you can clear your history. So if you just want to start all over again and you don't want to see any notifications from the last 24 hours, you can clear your history.
Close button.
And there's a close button.
Recent notifications list box. That username is taken. Try another.
All right, so now we're back in the list of notifications. We can do a number of things here. We can press enter on a notification to get information about it. So let's press enter here.
Enter notification details dialog. Notification text. Notification text. Notification text. Read only edit. Mike Woods has joined the meeting.
All right. So it gives us the notification text here, and you'll notice it says read only edit. That lets you know that this is an edit field, but it's a read only field, which means you cannot change any of the text here. You can just read it. But the benefit here is that you could read this notification text like you would a document. You can read it, by line.
Mike Woods has joined.
You can read it by word.
Mike Woods had joined the meeting.
So this is the text of the notification. Now, if I tab,
App read only edit Zoom A.
And it gives me the application, which is Zoom, that gave me this notification. If I tab again.
Time read only edit 12/6/2022 11:20:25 a.m. T.
And it gave me the date and time that notification came in.
Close button.
And here I can close this list of this detail
Space
for the notification. So again, we can we can down arrow, up arrow,
that username is
through these notifications, and we can press enter to get more details. You can also open a context menu. So the equivalent on the keyboard to right-clicking an item is pressing Shift F10 or the applications key. So if I do that here on a notification,
applications context menu create rule ...
we have two options. We have create rule.
Don't show in history ...
And we have don't show in history. Now, this lets us know we can either create a rule for how we manage this particular notification, or we can choose not to show it in the history, which means that we may still hear it, but we're not going to have it here in our history. So I'm going to press escape.
Escape, leaving menus.
All right, so let's tab over here to create rule. Now, again, you're going to see things in multiple places here. We can create a rule if we right click or Shift F10 or press the applications key on a notification, or we can just tab while we're on that notification. Let's navigate to one here.
You are in a practice session. You are in a closing tab at 11:11 a.m.
All right. We're here on a notification in Edge that said closing tab. All right, that was letting me know that I closed a page with Control F4. I closed a tab. I'm going to tab now, not to be confused with the tab that I was just talking about. That was a tab in the browser. I'm going to press the tab key.
Enable rules checkbox checked. Create rule ... button C.
Now it says create rule, and you'll hear it say ... C. That lets us know that we can also just press the letter C.
C, create rule dialog.
And I didn't have to actually tab to it. I could have just pressed C from where I was. But if you don't know the key, if you don't remember what that command is, you can just tab to it and you can press enter or space. And now we have a dialog for creating a rule. Now, there are a lot of ways that we can create a rule here. We're just going to create a really simple rule that will determine how we manage this notification. So let's just tab around this dialog as well. Here we have
contains
a combo box here that gives us some choices for how we want to handle the text of this rule. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to tab.
Edit, closing tab.
Now it said edit, closing tab. Now notice it did not say read only. So this is an edit field that we can edit text in. So this field contains the text of the notification. If I tab again.
Limit the notifications from Edge checkbox checked.
We have an option for, do we want to limit to text from Edge, or do we want to maybe have this rule apply to Chrome or any other browser?
Speech or sound action, speech action combo box.
This is really where you can customize these notifications, because from what this combo box lets you decide is whether or not you want to hear JAWS speak the notification and how you want to hear JAWS speak the notification.
Braille action combo box.
This combo box lets you choose how you want to interact with it on your Braille display.
Don't show in history checkbox not checked.
Again, we have the option of not showing this notification in our history, which we saw that option when we pressed Shift F10 or the applications key on the notification.
OK button.
We have an OK button.
Cancel button.
Cancel
Received notification.
All right, and we have received notification. Now, I'm going to tab again to the field that contains the text of this notification.
Edit. Closing tab.
And the text of this notification is closing tab. All right, so let's go back up. I'm going to press Shift Tab.
Rule type
So we can choose to create this rule for text that contains these words, closing tab,
contains begin.
that begins with either of those words. We can edit that text as we wish.
Ends with.
Ends with any of that text.
Matches pattern.
Or matches a specific pattern. I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm going to go back to contains, and I have to up arrow. It doesn't wrap back around, so I'm going to up arrow to it.
Ends begin contains.
All right, I'm going to tab, press the tab key here.
Edit. Closing tab.
And the text again is closing tab, which that's fine. So I'm going to press the tab key again.
Limit the notifications from Edge checkbox checked.
Now it's checked, so it's going to limit this notification to Microsoft Edge. I want this rule that I create to apply to this notification across all web browsers. So I'm going to press space.
Space not checked.
And uncheck that.
Speech or sound action. Speech action combo box.
So here we have different speech actions. The first option we have is, do we want to hear it, JAWS speak this notification? We can mute it.
Mute.
We can down arrow here to see what our other options are.
Shorten.
We could shorten it. We could just, if I just wanted to hear it say closed, I could shorten, I could take out, close tab and just have the word closed or something like that.
Play sound.
I could have it play a sound. If I didn't want to hear JAWS speak anything, but I wanted to hear that sound that let me know that action occurred, I could have it play a sound.
Speak the full message.
Or I could have it speak the full message. Let's go back up to mute.
Play mute.
All right, if I tab.
Braille action combo box.
Now here's where we get to determine what happens on the Braille display. I'm going to up arrow because it always places us on the second option here in this combo box.
Show nothing.
We can have it show nothing on the Braille display.
Show flash message.
We can have it show a flash message, which is just a message that will pop up on the Braille display for a certain amount of time and then it'll go away.
Show shortened flash message.
We can shorten that flash message. Now, if we choose this, same thing with how we determine how JAWS hears, how we determine how JAWS manages notification. If we choose to shorten it, if we tab here, we can actually type in the text that we want it to shorten it to. I'm not going to do that.
Show flash message.
So I'll just keep it on show flash message. So I want to mute this notification for JAWS. I don't want JAWS to speak it when it occurs, but maybe I want this to be a flash message on my Braille display. All right, I'm going to tab again here.
Don't show in history checkbox not checked.
I'm going to leave that unchecked.
OK button.
All right, so now I have specified how I want to create this rule. I'm going to press the space bar.
Space, create rule, name your rule dialog.
And here I can name the rule and I could give it whatever name I want.
OK button.
Tab to OK.
Space, notification history, create.
And I have now created a rule. Now, what's important here is not to remember the specific steps that we used for create a rule. It's more of you have a lot of options here and you can go in and you can really customize this. And the more you work with it, the more you'll customize it. Now, if we tab here.
Manage rules button.
So we're back in the main notification history dialog. We're on manage rules. So from here, I can press the space bar or enter. And it also gave me a keyboard command. Let's see what that was.
Manage rules button.
It didn't tell me. Let's see.
Create manage rules button.
M. Okay. So I could press M or I could just press space here.
Space. Manage notification rules dialog. Rules list box. Suggestion. Thoughts global mute show flash message.
All right. So here we have a list of rules. And again, if you have not created a rule, you won't have manage notifications in your dialog. So you have to have created a rule in order to see that. But here we have, it lands us in the list of rules that we've created.
Revisions, global mute, Zoom, screen shares.
And I'm just pressing down arrow to navigate through these. I'm going to find the rule that we just created.
Zoom participants, closing tab, global mute, show flash message.
So what it told me was closing tab. It read the text of the notification, read the name of the rule rather. Closing tab.
Closing tab, global mute, show flash message.
Global, which means that I told this to, manage this notification, create this rule for all applications.
Closing tab, global mute, show flash message.
And it tells me the two actions I chose. I chose to mute it for JAWS and show a flash message for my Braille display. So from here, I could right click once again, use the Shift F10 or the applications key.
Applications, context menu, modify ...
I could modify that rule.
Delete 2 of 3.
I'm just pressing down arrow here. I could delete it.
Rename ...
I could rename it. And if I escape here, because I don't want to do any of those things right now,
Escape, leaving menus, manage notification rules.
I'm back here in my notifications or the rules that I've created. If I tab, I'll get to those options as well.
Modify ... button M, delete button D, rename ... button N.
And you'll hear those letters spoken after the option here that indicate those are the keyboard commands for that option.
Close button.
I have a close button here, so I could press space on it or I could press escape.
Space, notification.
And when I'm finished, I can just press escape as well to get out of notification history.
Escape, zoom, you.
And I've done that. Now, a couple of other things, I mentioned layered commands. So we have a couple of other commands for notification history here in the command layer. If you want to hear the last notification you received, and this is really handy if you're working and you hear a notification, and I don't know if you guys do this, I sure do. I'm thinking about whatever task I'm doing. I hear a notification come in, and sometimes I just hit control because I really need to concentrate on what I'm doing. And then I think, oh, what was that notification? I need to hear that. If you press insert space, followed by Shift N as a notification,
that username is taken.
It reads that last notification to you. So that's another command there. One other thing, and this is new as well in 2023, some applications use what are called toast notifications. There's a certain type of notification that's there temporarily. Not all applications use this, but for example, Microsoft Office does. So Outlook, for example, when you have a new message come in, you might hear the sound that indicates you have a new email, but then you might also hear who the email is from, and it might even start reading it to you. If you don't want to hear that, you can turn off the toast notifications. To do that, it's a toggle. You just do the same thing to turn it on as you do off. You're going to press insert space, Control N as a notification.
Toast notification announcements disabled.
So it disables those. All right, and then finally, if you want to look up, we talk about keyboard commands here, and there's so many, it's hard to remember them. So one other thing I want to show you is how to look up commands. You can press insert space, press the letter J.
Search for JAWS commands dialog.
And then you can type in whatever it is you want to search for and navigate on this page, and it'll give you a list of commands.
Escape.
All right, let me
Title is search.
Turn it back over.
Escape. Meeting controls. Alt A.
To you, Betsy Ann, and let's see if we have any questions.
All right. We do have a few questions that have come in.
Okay.
So let me kind of scroll back in time and get them from the beginning.
Okay.
So first one was if these features are going to work on a computer without admin rights, such as a student computer.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Does the 24-hour rule for the rules setup apply if you shut down or restart your computer?
Yes, I actually do see that. That's a good question. I think that it will still show you those notifications as long as they're still, because they're taken from Windows. It's getting those from Windows. So yeah, but if you don't have JAWS running, they won't. Any notification you receive while JAWS is not running will not show up in your notification history.
Gotcha. This is another question that came in. My email connects and disconnects regularly, and I hear about it every time. Would checking this box not speak that out loud, or are those notifications different from the history?
No, you could actually, what you would want to do, you can check the box for don't show in history, and you can also choose to mute that in where it says the speech combo box. You can choose mute and you will not hear that notification.
All right, hopefully that helps that person with their question. I noticed you are running Windows 11. Does 2023 behave differently in Windows 10?
No, No. In fact, you'll find a lot of similarities when using Windows 11. Of course, there's some things are different as far as how it looks and, some of the new features of 11, but it's going to run the same way in 10.
All right. And we do have a question about training. We can save that for the end. I know you've got a bit of information to share about the kind of training that Vispero offers and the kind of
Absolutely.
resources are available there. So for the person who submitted that question, don't worry, we will address that later in the webinar. And finally, will there ever be a future update to JAWS when you are working with a Braille display and scientific Windows calculator that will reproduce in Nemeth code on the Braille display?
I can't speak to that specifically, but I can tell you that we are constantly updating all of these features. And if there's something specific that you would like to see, send an email to training@vispero.com and we'll make sure that it gets to the people who need to see that.
Great. All right. So let's jump back into our presentation for today. We're at 12:42, so we've got just a little bit more than 15 minutes until the end of our webinar. So I think we're on Zoom text tethered view.
Yeah, just really quickly before that, I wanted to mention about getting help in JAWS. I just wanted to mention super quickly, and I'm not going to take up any more time because I want Mike to be able to present tethered view to you. So when you're in the JAWS window, you can press Alt-H, which will take you to the help menu. And from there, you're going to be able to navigate that menu with your arrow keys. You're going to find the JAWS basic training. You're going to find help topics, which are going to give you specific help topics for specific features of JAWS. And you're also going to find JAWS command search, which was what I just accessed when I pressed insert space followed by J. You're going to find lists of keyboard commands. You're also going to find a what's new option. So that's going to tell you what's new in the version that you're running, which if you're running 2023, it's going to tell you what's new in 2023. You get an option for tech support information, web resources, which we're going to talk about our training resources here in just a minute, but you'll find things there for like Surf's Up for learning how to navigate the internet with JAWS. There's an option for about JAWS. You're going to find the startup wizard, licensing information. So just a lot of information that you're going to find there. And then you're also going to find check for updates. And that is what Ryan was talking about earlier when he said, if you're running version 2022 and you are, you want to update to 2023, you can go to check for updates and it's going to be there as well. So I just wanted to mention how useful that help menu is and all of the information that you can find there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Lots of good information there. So I am going to chat and try and squeeze this in the last couple of minutes so that you all can head off at the right time about tethered view, which is a new feature in ZoomText and in Fusion. So what is tethered view? When using high magnification, so those of you, I think there was 15% of you said you were using ZoomText and 13 are using Fusion on this call. So you're familiar with when you're using higher magnification levels, that if you were going to do something else, such as maybe go down to the search menu at the bottom left, or inside of a Word document, maybe you're looking at comments that were left in the Word document, that activity is happening outside of the magnified view range that you're in. So what tethered view does is actually opens up a window inside of your magnified image area and brings the activity to you. So basically it's tethering what you're looking to do with where you actually are on the screen. So I'm going to do a quick screen share here, and I'm going to show you a couple videos. The first few videos are going to be showing you what it's like without tethered view, and then I'll show you what it's like with tethered view. So I am going to screen share. Give me a second.
All right, I'll stop.
Thanks, Betsy Ann. And so why did we develop tethered view? So first off and foremost, this one is showing you the ZoomText toolbar, showing you under Windows, you access tethered view. You can enable or disable it. We're showing you that if you went down and did a search option and then you were typing in your search field here right now, we're looking for Word. You'll notice that Word's not showing up anywhere. It's down below. We're too zoomed in, so we now have to scroll down to Word to find where we want to be at, right? So that could be with anything. If you misspelt Word, for example, the same thing, and you want to go to a web result, that's going to be further down. So it makes you search a little bit more, or scroll a little bit more, I should say. So now using tethered view, if we go to search and we start typing in Word, you'll notice in this blue box, boom, there's Word showing right below that. We don't have to scroll down on the screen. We don't have to move around at all. It brings that right up into focus, right where that search field is. So it's really nice. Personally, what I like is using this inside of Excel with formulas. So I'm going to go on to the next one. So the formula field option inside of Excel, if you were looking at, say, a total figure down at the bottom, maybe you have 100 numbers that you're adding up to a total. So you know that now you want to add in a formula to add these all up, right? So normally the formula is going to be up on the top. So if you're down, 100 rows within an Excel document, to get back up there, you got to scroll back up, you got to type in the formula, and you got to make sure, am I on the right cell still? So watch this video here. What it's going to do is show you that, boom, when I'm on that formula, it just shows me, or on that cell, it shows me the formula right above it. So it's, again, tethering you to that upper area and bringing it down to where you're working in the document. So it's really, really nice. And so this video is just kind of going through the same thing. I'm going to a different cell here, and it's showing me what that formula is for that specific cell. It's also going to do the same thing inside of a Word document where you might have comments. So if you're working on a document with multiple people and people are adding comments in throughout that document, great for a school setup, also in the work environment, if you have multiple people doing work inside of the same document. So here it is. Normally the comments show up on the right-hand side. Here with tethered view turned on, that comment actually shows up right above where I'm working. So it's right within my field of view again. So depending on how magnified in I have something, it's going to, I'm going to just stop my share there. It's going to allow you to see it right there where you are with whatever magnification level you have turned on. So it's really nice at tethering in what you need. I will say to turn on tethering, it's really easy. You're just going to go into the Windows option within your ZoomText or Fusion toolbar, and you're going to go to tethered view, and you're going to enable it. The keyboard shortcut for turning it on is caps lock plus T. So to turn on or turn off, it's caps lock plus T. And if you want to view the results at the top of the search list, you can do caps lock, shift and T. So right now on the slide is an image of, again, inside of an Excel document, showing you where that formula is actually right above the actual cell that you're working in. So it's really, really a nice feature. That's new in 2023 for ZoomText and for Fusion. Any questions on that?
Yes, we had a question come in. Would this
Awesome.
display when looking at spelling suggestions while also looking at the word within the context of a sentence?
Nancy, that's a great question. I haven't used it in that format. Elizabeth, do you know if that does that? If not, that's a great suggestion for future updates.
I don't believe it does, but that is a wonderful suggestion. And please send that to training@vispero.com. And I'm not a ZoomText user, so I don't know, but I will find out for you. And if
Yeah,
it's not, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I just took that down to the spelling suggestion. That's a great one,
Absolutely.
Nancy.
Yes.
Because I don't believe that it does do that right now.
Don't think so.
Yeah, but that would be a great feature to add in.
And keep in mind, all of these features are going to evolve. And so, we definitely want to know what you would like to see and what your students would like to see. So let us know.
Absolutely.
And something that we have not addressed in this training, but a question that did come in, what's new in JAWS 2023 for working with touchscreen?
We haven't really added any functionality to that yet. But we do have touch gestures. So we can definitely give you information on that. There is a JAWS touch cursor, which JAWS has many cursors, and we will be talking more about that in the future. That's actually some training that we're going to develop. But you can use touch screens. For example, if you have a Windows machine with a touch screen, you can use gestures that are similar to those you would use on other touch screen devices with accessibility.
All right. I don't believe there were any other questions that came in about this topic. So let's keep moving forward, and we'll hopefully be able to address not only the training question,
Sure.
but any others that come in as we are wrapping up today's webinar.
All right, and I think, did we have a polling question?
We do. So
yeah, we do
Paul,
have one
when you're
more
ready.
left. All right. So the question is, in which applications is tethered view available? Windows Search, Microsoft Word Comments, Microsoft Excel Formula Bar, or all of the above? So in which applications is tethered view available? Windows Search, Microsoft Word Comments, Microsoft Excel Formula Bar, or all of the above?
And I went through that pretty quick. So if everybody caught that, I'm thoroughly impressed.
All right, this will be the litmus test to see if we need to maybe do a quick review. All right, 100% have answered. Thank you guys for being on this today. In which application is tethered view available? 6% chose Windows Search, 2% chose Microsoft Word Comments, 2% chose Microsoft Excel Formula Bar, and 90% chose all of the above.
I'm thoroughly impressed. The 90% is correct. So it's all of the above. And all of your other people that guessed, you were correct as well, because it works in all of those. So you can do it in Windows Search, Microsoft Word Comments, and Microsoft Excel Formula Bar at this time.
Awesome. Okay, so Elizabeth, I'm going to pass it back to you for our training resources.
All right, so wanted to just talk just for a second about our training page, freedomscientific.com/training. This is where you're going to find all of our training content right there. Everything from our training schedule, which we put on the page at the end of every month. For example, at the end of November, we put the one for December up. So if you want to know what events are coming up, go to our training page and there is a link there for the training schedule. Also, we have listed there upcoming webinars, archived webinars, which we call our webinars on demand page, our Surfs Up page, which is a link to our training tutorial on how to navigate the internet with JAWS. We have information about training for JAWS, ZoomText, Fusion, our Braille products, videos, which are just the short tutorials that will, if you're looking for a specific task, you can find on our YouTube and TikTok channels. And also our teachers page, which is where you will find JAWS modules that we have created for JAWS training, as well as content on using math and JAWS and math and Braille, and a whole lot more. And all these pages, of course, are constantly evolving. So if you have topics that you would like to see us create some training on, if you have questions, comments, feedback, please send those to training@vispero.com. That's training@Vispero, which is V as in Victor, I, S as in Sierra, P-E-R-O. So training@vispero.com.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And we'll take it over to Paul to go through our final content.
Okay, so let's talk about our discoveries for today. We learned that Smart Glance enables JAWS and Fusion users to quickly locate text that visually stands out on web pages. Again, if you're a JAWS user or if you're using Fusion, you do need to have JAWS running for Smart Glance to work. If you're a ZoomText user, you can see that information anyway, most likely. Dell users, they can now use the Waves Max audio feature without experiencing instability. If you previously disabled it, you can go back and turn it back on and it will work as it should. Using tethered view makes it easier to interact with information that may be far from the magnified view. So finally, let's talk today about purchasing JAWS ZoomText and Fusion from APH. Now there's three options here. There's the previously used Freedom Scientific software suite, which gives you JAWS, Fusion, and ZoomText licenses. It's $300 annual for that. You need to contact customer service to get that. The other two options use the portal. We've talked about the portal before. You can get a JAWS student license for $99, a ZoomText student license for $89. And you do not need to go through customer service for those. You can go to the APH website and find those, download, go to the portal from the site and get all the information on that. Of course, all licenses are available on quota or from cash purchase. And to answer a question that came in about whether or not you're eligible for 2023 with your student license, it depends on when you purchased it. As long as that student license is still valid, you can get any updates, including the 2023 large and smaller updates, until that license needs to be renewed. So the licenses do not follow the typical schedule of 2023, 2024, the way the SMAs did in the past and that sort of thing. Your license is good for a year from when you purchase it. So whatever updates come out during that year, you're entitled to those with that license. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Paul. That was a question that came in. All right, we've got one final page about some of our Vispero products at APH.
So this page is just showing you the different products that we work with APH to develop. So there's QR codes that will bring you directly to the product page. There's the Jupiter portable video magnifier, the Juno, a handheld video magnifier with speech, the VideoMag HD, which is a portable handheld video magnifier, and then our software suite. So as Paul mentioned, we have the suite, JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion, or we also have the portal licenses. We are looking to kind of move everything more towards the portal, just as a heads up. That is the better and easier way to manage the licenses for sure. So these are just some options here, but thanks everybody.
Yes, and big thanks to our presenters for this fast and furious webinar where we covered 3 different kinds of software. If you have questions, we've provided that training at vispero.com email address. I'm sure Elizabeth, Mike, and Ryan would be happy to answer any questions that came up after this webinar. Additionally, look at that training website to see what is available not only for JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion, but some of the other products that we have at APH through Vispero, and for any Vispero products such as Ruby.